Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Sustainability Expert Series. I am so thrilled to have you join us today for a day of learning and inspiration. I'm Janet Greco from Broadcast Projects, and I've been producing events on this platform for just over 2 years. And I just wanted to take a moment to say that we're really excited to be bringing you this series. It's very timely, and there's been a tremendous amount of interest, which is not at all surprising. And yeah, we expect a lot of interest on the part of the audience to listen to the experts that we're bringing to you. I want to make sure that you understand that we are not the experts, myself and Ben, who are presenting and driving the event program along with an editorial board, but rather the intention is to bring experts to you so that we can all learn and discuss things together, because I think we're all very much in the realm of trying to understand and make sense of this topic for our businesses. So our goal really is to make the Sustainability Expert Series something that's very accessible and also something that's actionable. And I just wanted to mention 2 ways that we're planning to do that. Number one is that we know that there's a lot of events and a lot of interest in this topic. And so I run something on the Broadcast Projects website, which is called the TV Events Hub. We've added a section there to highlight all of the sustainability events, including, for example, Hemini's EBU Sustainability Summit that will take place in April. So that's a resource that you can access to see all the industry events, including sustainability ones, and you can also add your own events if you would like to do that. And the second way is through dissemination. You can expect webinar replays and write-ups of our event series to be published after the event and on an ongoing basis. These events will take place on the second Tuesday of every month with summer break, but we do have a robust schedule, and we'll look forward to sharing the agenda with you a little bit today. So you can see what's on the horizon and also hopefully get some of your input on what we plan to do. I want to thank the editorial board. We have been working on this program for the year since last October. So a lot of effort's gone into it, and we'll tell you a little bit more about that in towards the end of this particular session. Last but not least, yeah, I just want to say thank you to everyone and hand it over to Ben to take it away.
Before I start and introduce my Valentine's Day, Hemini, in a minute, I wanted to say why we came, a lot of thought went into how we wanted to kick off 2023. And sustainability, as Janet just said, is a growing topic. And all of us in our professional careers, we've come across new subjects. Developers learn a new programming language, salespeople a new sales technique, and it's exciting. Wow, something new, and you learn it, and you feel, you know, slightly expanded by that learning process. Here we're talking about something that's slightly different in nature. I think when somebody addresses sustainability in their professional life, it's something that speaks to your inner who you are. It speaks to what you're going to leave behind to your children. It speaks to something about humanity, and it's a much more impactful, I think. And that's why I wanted this first session to be a fireside chat format to try and understand how that journey impacts us, because most of you who are listening today, live or on demand, are here because you're interested in that journey. And so we thought, well, Hemini is a great person to tell us a little bit about that journey. So Hemini, I'd like to start by asking you the usual question about yourself, your professional journey towards sustainability. If you could start off by just presenting who you are and how you got to where you are.
Thanks Ben and Janet and Eileen and everyone for having me here today. So I'm Hemini Mehta. I'm at the EBU, which is the European Broadcasting Union. We're basically the union of public service media across Europe. And then we have some odd anomalies like Japan, Australia, and Canada. So sustainability for me has been with me basically all my life. It's been something really important. It wasn't the term sustainability growing up. It was just the way life was. And it was only in the last 3 years when COVID started that my my job and my passion, or the idea of sustainability, actually came together and converged in one role. But until then, it was just a way of life for me. So it was sustainable in the way Hemini was in her daily life. She came to work, she did her stuff at work. The never the twains did really meet. I mean, there was some things that were different. I'd come by public transport, etc. All of that personal side was there, but in my role, it was literally in the last 3 years that changed that. So COVID was an accelerator.
And so would you say that those last 3 years that there's been any kind of echo effect in your private life? I mean, when you get on your bike, has it changed your attitude to cycling to work or not, that now it's more wholesome, or is it, are you still the same person you were 3 years ago?
I would say I'm the same person I was a few years ago. Some things have changed in my personal life. I've started digging a little bit deeper into sustainability, because you realize that it's a new topic, but it's also a very complex topic. And the more you delve into it, the more you realize how the complexities of it, especially in media and my day-to-day life, struggling with like technology and knowing the understanding idea of how much how does technology, what's the carbon emissions and the energy usage of technology, the idea of Jevon's paradox, the way things are made, the circular economy, and trying to put all of these together is really, really quite complex. And you realize that there's so many different layers. And in some cases, yes. So in a strange way, I was more sustainable when I was younger, because the sustainability was part of life for me. It was the way I worked when I was living with my parents. When I came out of living with my parents and getting into what was actually modern Western living more, that's where the things changed a little bit. And now going back into sustainability, I'm becoming more Hemini as I was when I was living with my parents than Hemini at university, for example. So yeah, just small things to see can make a big difference, and what it means to you. Things like stopping using plastic bottles, etc., and trying to do small things in my own way as Hemini.
So what I'm reading from what you're saying is you started life through your family and the culture you came from, leading a relatively sustainable life, and then going through your studies and your early professional work kind of made you jump on planes and drink from plastic bottles and stuff, and you're finding your way back there. And what I'm trying to explore is the linkage between your professional engagement and that. Do you think it would have happened, that finding your way back, even if you weren't working on sustainability? Are they related to you in the way you perceive your daily life?
Yeah, I think they are. I would say I was sustainable before compared to sort of the average person, but knowing exactly, and when you do metrics and you're looking at figures, etc., that's where it kind of really hits home. Like, for example, things like the small things that we do, like the small emails, and how much email messages go back and forth, and you realize how the metrics around that when you compare one email that goes out, and then you realize that billions of these things are happening all the time. So you imagine that being expanded. So yeah, like looking at the metrics and the actual impacts that a person can have, yes, it's made me go back and be more careful.
And moving on that personal experience, how has the last 4 years being fully focused on sustainability affected your general apprehension of the future? Would you say that you're more hopeful about the future of humanity on this planet, or less hopeful now that you've become a fully fledged sustainability expert?
It's not as simple as that, Ben. You go through it's a roller coaster, like anything in life. There are times where you feel really hopeful because you may have seen an article, or you've heard of some examples, or you've seen something happening in your local community. For example, looking at when COVID first started, we had all the students, etc., go out marching. That was really hopeful for me. And then there are times when you look at some things, and especially around greenwashing, where you see things marching on. Like 3 years ago, there was a lot on sustainability, not as much as there is now. And it feels like everybody is getting onto that bandwagon. And when you hear all that noise that's going on with sustainability, and you know some of it's literally greenwashing, and having to cut through that those are my doom and gloom days. So sometimes it's just a roller coaster on a day-to-day basis. It's like some days you're feeling really hopeful, other days not so much.
And so do you kind of see light at the end of the tunnel? And I didn't really get a sense of which way you're leaning on this. You're just saying it's always moving, and some days you see light at the end of the tunnel, and some days you see darkness, right? Is that what you said, basically?
Yeah, as in there is doom and gloom sometimes, and yes, a lot of it's around what I read, what's happening, etc. But I'm like, overall, I'm still hopeful, in the sense that I think we as humanity, as the human race, want to survive. And the idea of having to survive, we don't have much of a choice against Mother Nature, to be honest. So we will have to work and be in greener ways if we want to survive.
And a question I'll ask Eileen when I bring her on in a minute too, but being a woman dedicated to sustainability, is it fun? I mean, from the outside, it seems a little bit austere as a kind of endeavor. Did you have fun in your daily life as a sustainability expert?
Yeah, you just meet, it's a really lovely topic, because you meet people from all walks of life. Everybody in all walks of life are interested in sustainability in some form or another. It's a really collaborative community, because it's the one community that, there are a few others, like the creative processes, etc., where it's not just done in-house. It's not you sitting at your desk here writing away, and therefore you do things that are sustainable. You can't do it completely on your own. You have to have collaborations with others. You learn from others. You get inspiration from others. So it's not something that you can do on your own. In that sense, it's a really nice community to be part of. And it also helps. My background is technology, so in most cases I've been there's been very few women around when I was earlier on in my career. I've gone through those areas where I've done tech lead, and have been the tech lead, which was at that time still seen as a bit new and not normal. So yeah, it's nice to be in a community where it's more mixed and more diverse.
I think the community aspect is certainly something that we run like 6 sessions with Janet already on sustainability, and part of the conclusion of every one of those is we have to get together, we have to network. That even somebody in a very powerful position, the UN or whatever, you're at the EBU, which is very influential, you can't do that much on your own. You have to network. You have to
exactly. And just go on. I just quickly finish. And on that, there was this, we had last year at the Sustainability Summit, we had a session which was looking at sports virtual production. And that was actually a co-jointed joint presentation between BBC and Sky, which in other cases just would never really happen. So when I say it's collaborative, you kind of
get arch enemies to work together on sustainability.
Exactly.
That's a great example. And going back, you just mentioned the fact of doing this as a woman. And did you find that being a sustainability expert, being a woman, has it been helpful sometimes? Will people think that that's something that your sensitivities as a woman might make you more credible or less credible? Has it had any bearing on your work?
It hasn't on my work, but I can probably from the outside, there is this, if you looked at it a few years ago, there was probably this idea that most people that were working in sustainability were women, because in overall sustainability is still about nurturing, and it was probably akin to HR, for example, where you still see majority of them of the staff being women. But I think now, as things are changing, you're starting to see, and I'm starting to see a lot more mixed diversity in the people, because in some cases, in some organizations, sustainability has been around for a long time, that it's turning into a cultural change. And now you're starting to see the culture change happen, and sustainability being part and parcel of everybody's role. And therefore, when you have group meetings, etc., you start to see a lot more, at least gender balance.
Okay, well, that's interesting. I'm talking to a gender balance expert in our industry. You probably know Claudia Vaccaroni, who used to work at EBU, and she. I'm hoping to bring her on. Claudia, if you're listening, I intend to hook you, to have you sit on this spot and tell us about the journey that she's taken over the last 5 years or so, and say, how would that relate to the sustainability one, gender balance, and is this part of the same story, or are we talking completely different subjects? But let's not go beyond that. I have another maybe slightly provocative question for you. Is how long do you think, or maybe forever, we'll need people like you in organizations who have a kind of, it says, I'm the sustainability person here? Do you think that's your job is forever, or is it a temporary thing?
I hope, my personal hope, that it's not a job forever. As I come from tech, and you know very well, Benjamin, is the working in agile format. So I used to be a Scrum Master. And for me, the idea of becoming a Scrum Master was that you would help the team to become self-sufficient and being able to self-organize, etc. So the idea is you come in to teach something, and then you're no longer needed because it's become such a way of life. And I see the sustainability role, and my hope for the sustainability role is exactly the same thing, that it becomes this role that comes in to help systemize and create the culture change. And the idea is that, and this is just Hemini speaking, not Hemini EBU, the idea is that it's going to be so integrated as people's roles that there will no longer be a need for at least a huge central department, maybe 1 or 2 people, fine. But the idea is that it disappears and it becomes part of people's roles, just like budgets are, looking after budget requirements, right, are part of people's roles, even though they're not finance. So that's my hope for sustainability, that at some point my role won't be needed.
Okay, I like the way you've made it akin to sort of management, and a good manager comes to a new job, and after a few quarters, years, or however long it takes, when they move, they don't actually need to be replaced if they've done a good job. So that's an interesting one. So let's open up the debate to a slightly other angle, and before moving to your organization, talk about the globe and how different regions of the globe are reacting, again, with the media industry. And we're talking about sustainability, and there's this kind of feeling that most people share. We don't actually have much data to back it up yet, that Europe is kind of leading the way, at least in terms of regulation. The 8K TVs are going to be forbidden from next month and stuff like that. Certainly a lot more happening in those areas than, say, in the United States, but I'm not an expert of all markets in the world. You have a much bigger global vision, although there's Europe in EBU, but I know that you have a vision of the world. So my question to you is, one, is Europe leading the ways? Do you ascribe to that feeling, and if so, why?
So yes, in the sense that I think Europe has managed to do a lot, that it kind of captures this overall feeling of and systemizing and regulations, etc., of sustainability. Maybe in the day-to-day side of things, not so much. I mean, there's great initiatives and things happening in Africa, in Asia, in smaller pockets. They just don't have that overarching umbrella for things to hang off. And that's where I think Europe has done a great job, because it started through national governments and obviously the European Union, etc. So they've started to officialize it.
Right.
So that's why there's this idea of obviously Europe leading the way, and in that sense, yes, they are. That's my idea.
There was a provocative idea that came out in last week's webinar, Faultline webinar on sustainability. I can't remember if it was Tommy Flanagan who asked the question, but somebody with the idea that because of regulation in Europe, a lot of organizations, so maybe not the EBU, but others are saying, okay, well, regulators doing it, so it's not my job. Let me wait for the regulator to tell me what to do. And the argument was maybe that in the United States, where there isn't any regulation happening, people are having to actually do stuff on their own, because if they don't, nothing's going to happen. Do you think there's any truth in that vision, that regulation can sometimes slow us down because we're waiting for the regulator to solve all our problems?
It depends who you talk to. There will be those, just like everywhere else, that will say, well, I'm not changing my work and my system until I'm made or forced to do it. And the others will do it regardless. And I think in that sense, there's no difference whether you're American or European or anything else. But yeah, I firmly believe that there are layers, and all the layers in this system need to work. So there are things that regulators and governments need to do in order to make it work. There are things that organizations need to do in order to make things work. There are things employees need to do. There are things we as individuals need to do. And I think it's only when all of these layers are working together in sustainability where we see that real push forward. And I think everybody has a responsibility on that. It's everybody's responsibility, because it's not one area that's affected.
Well, thank you for that response. So just one last question before we close this fireside chat thing, and I bring Eileen in, is to, and just a quick call out to the audience. You can put questions already, and some questions are coming in, so don't hesitate. We'll answer as many questions as we can in this session, and any that we can't will be carried on to the next question. So don't worry, your questions will be addressed. I just wanted to ask you as a last question, I mean, to give us the story about how EBU as an organization, because I believe you were their first official sustainability person, so you can tell us the story of how the EBU embraced sustainability, if you accept that term, and how they got to where they are today.
So actually, I wasn't the first person. There was somebody else who tried to do it at least 7-8 years before I did, and sadly, there was no uptake on it. And so I had the chance to do it in COVID, because it was a passion project, and an opportunity came about where I had some time to do this. And I was lucky enough that at that time, things were moving, and especially with our members. So we had great conversations with a lot of our members, like Eileen in RTE and some of the others, ITV, BBC, etc., France Télévisions. And there was finally this idea of embracing it. So it was really, really great to get the channels, the broadcasters together, because similarly to what I've already said, the idea is that this topic of sustainability is still fairly new, and we're still all every day trying to grapple with it, to understand it, to make sure that we're keeping to a good gold standard, etc. Or we've tried something and it doesn't seem to be moving very fast. So it's a chance for all of us to come together and knock our heads together and say, well, what's going on? We've tried this, or what are you using to do this, or who have you done this with? And all of a sudden you get those that have been leading the way or been doing it for a number of years to come and give you some lessons learned, so you don't have to go through the same pain points as they did. So yeah, in that sense, I was lucky at the time when COVID started, there was this big push towards sustainability and the environment, and it just happened that that was the right time to create this vibe come magic. So yeah, it was
Oh,
a lucky moment.
how very modest of you, Hemini. Lovely. So this time I'd like to invite my second Valentine date. Eileen, if you could turn your camera on. Great to see you again, Eileen.
Yes.
And to jump straight in, we've said several times in this hour already with Hemini, but in all our sustainability series, this conclusion that organizations are limited in what they can do alone. Typically, scope 1 and scope 2 in the media industry, they're this big, typically they're always less than 10% together. Sometimes they're as low as 2%. And, scope 3 is always at least 90%, if it's not 98%. And so we have to work as a group, as an ecosystem. We have to interact. So I'd like to ask you to jump in straight and go on from that story about EBU. And is EBU the right place for the media industry? Is it where you do most of your sustainability networking? And has it been working for you?
Okay, I think the term ecosystem is a brilliant one, Ben, because it identifies an environment where people are reaching out to each other, and everybody in different areas, everything they do affects another part. And this is very much the case for sustainability, that everything that we do as broadcasters in RTE will affect other people. Our audiences are, the public, depending on how we manage our sustainability. And everything that others do in the world affects us as an industry. So we are all an ecosystem. And that's why groups like this and the sharing of information is so important, because we all impact on each other. And we can't do sustainability on our own. We have to do it as a group. And I would agree that the EBU has taken a very leadership role. And I do agree that Hemini is being very modest in the role that she took, because she did pull everyone together during COVID. And I think huge milestones have been reached since then. And I think it's extremely helpful to have collaboration between the industry. We have been introduced as experts, but I think we're only up to where we are now in what's happening in sustainability. And I would be modest about that, because there's always somebody who can teach us something, and we can learn from their stories. And I think that again underlines the importance of the collaboration. And I know that it stretches a little bit further than the EBU, the Europe. I think the one thing that we all have in common with regard to sustainability is it's about our existence. And one of the things that I have seen over my involvement with sustainability and my collaboration is that businesses which should be competing against each other are actually working together. And I think that really is a beautiful thing to happen in a recognition of the significance of what sustainability.
The Sky BBC example that Hemini was talking about.
Yes. So okay. I do think that the EBU has taken a very leadership role in pulling us all together. And it's been refreshing and enjoyable to work in that group, because everyone has worked together well.
Okay, and that touches on that question I was trying to, I was asking Hemini, which you kind of skirted around, is it actually fun as a job? And you're saying it has been fun, that you have, so I'm getting that, because at the end of the day, we do need to draw more people into this this part of the industry, and to realize that, it's not just a feel-good factor in terms of saving humanity. Yes. It also creates a productive working environment.
I think
so. Go ahead.
I think sustainability, by its nature, brings everyone together, because it includes things. You spoke about women in roles as well. I think, if you're really thinking sustainability, you're thinking about inclusion. You're thinking about everyone having a part in the world. We're all living creatures. The world is organic. And I think true sustainability is about living that sustainable world and engaging with everybody and acceptance, and life should be fun, and we need to make it so. And I think sometimes we can be hard on ourselves as well in thinking that we have to meet targets or and all the rest of it. But yes, of course. But you know, my feeling is that the way I've always managed is that, you know, keep things as simple as possible. Einstein said, keep things as simple as possible, but not simpler. And I think so long as we don't become intimidated by the challenges and we work together and are excited about what other people are bringing to us, I think we're always going to be in a learning growth mindset. And I think that's going to be crucial to our survival. I think if we build up silos and you know, cut ourselves off or not share things or become negative, I think that's going to be a very that's going to be one of the obstacles to where I think we all want to get to.
But when I hear both of you, Eileen and Hemini, talk, you bring in social, almost political aspects of society and how we live together. And that kind of might be a little bit scary to people who are kind of on the edge of this, and you know, they want to go to work and do their work, and maybe they part of a political party or something in their private life, they don't mix. And this is why this is so intrinsic, and just brings another idea that all the green thinking over the last, which green as a political concept is much newer than any other. Most of the left, right, when you're talking to conservatives, or in Britain they're called Labour or whatever, different movements, their roots are multiple hundreds of years old, what they're telling you about distribution of wealth, things like that. And then the environmental people came along, and they're much more recent. It's only been 50 years, or you can trace roots a little bit, right? So it's a completely new idea. And I think a lot of us find it difficult that we always thought we separate these worlds, but actually the environmentalists today, you know, whether it's the Greenpeaces, whatever you think of them, I don't want to get into politics, but they all seem to have embraced the new ideas. You can't fix the environment without fixing society at the same time. You can't separate the two questions. And I'm hearing that from both of you together, that this kind of holistic view is necessary.
I feel, Ben, that I am not a political person. For me, it's general principles and what's right, and you know, we all have to share the world together. And you know, and I think if you start from a nature perspective, nature is natural, and as Walter Stahel, the founder of the circular economy, said, there is no waste in nature. You know, most waste is man-made, and unfortunately we made a lot of things that now we can't get rid of. But I think if you embrace the principle of the UN Sustainable Goals, the 17 Sustainable Goals, which are really about, you know, existence and living, you are really touching upon sustainability, because if the world isn't right for people in it, it's not going to be right for business. It's not going to be right for anybody. So I think sustainability can be as big or as small as we want it to be, but I believe in keeping it simple. And every single one of us, no matter who we are and what role we do in the world, it's the value and significance is we do as good a job as we can. Not how important we are or how, you know, low paid or high paid we are. I think what's important is we do the best possible job we can in what we are doing in that particular role. And in every role now, I believe we can be sustainable. We can make sustainable decisions when we're eating an ice cream. We can take the wrapper off and we can put it in the right place.
Okay, I can see questions are coming in, but before we get to them, I want to, because you've kind of stole a bit of my thunder for the next part of talking about the 17 sustainability goals. We'll be there in just a second. Before that, I want to wrap up this section. Hemini, you too, the both of you, ask you what you think are realistic objectives, goals that you set yourselves in 2023. So if we meet again in February, Valentine's Day 2024, what will be realistic things that we can say in the last year we've at least achieved this? What's to go first? Eileen.
Okay, I would like to see that we are moving along with the climate action directive within Ireland and complying with that and complying with all the, fulfilling all the commitments that we have made as an organisation, and sharing some of our experiences. I feel that in 12 months' time, if we fulfil our obligations and our commitments as best we can in the climate we're in, I will be happy.
Hemini?
For me, it's if I take the other side of that question, which is outside of the organization role, us as individuals, I think it's, for me, it'd be really important if we'd become a little bit more aware, and when we come back, that you would have made small changes in your day-to-day life that you would have been able to see have made huge differences, whether it's something like, I don't know, going meat-free Mondays, or using less plastic, taking your own water bottles when you go out, etc. All these small things that you can do as individuals, and come back and say, this is the stuff I've done. That's why I've taken a different role from
Right.
Eileen's taken that organizational role, where I believe
Yep.
it's everybody's responsibility, and I'm bringing it back to us as individuals.
Okay, so before we get to the questions, at the end of this session, I'll just see if I can quickly share my screen. It worked in the rehearsal yesterday. Will it work as we go live today? You should be seeing a screen.
We are.
Yep. And so the idea here, I want to show you the work we've been doing behind the scenes with the editorial committee, with Jonathan, who you'll meet later, and Trees, and a few others. We have lots and lots of ideas planned. We have scheduled 3 events. So event number 1, you are in the middle of it. This is, the years ahead, this professional personal challenges. And so I hope you'll let us know in the comments and through the next hour what you think of it. Eileen was talking about the 17 sustainability goals, so that's scheduled for next month. We're still working on the fine details, and Eileen will have some guests with her. She'll present, and the idea is to go through those 17 sustainability goals so that we try and see what relevance they have to the media industry in general and to us as individuals in particular. And the idea is they may not be perfect, but they have an incredible merit over other things, is that they exist. And there's something we can relate to and we can use as an anchor point to talk about our progress. We were just talking about progress. So that would be the idea of the next session, and to see how, as Eileen was saying, how every little thing makes a difference on at least one of those 17 goals. We've scheduled the April event. By the way, my bad. Every event is on the 2nd Tuesday of the month. We might have to change 1 or 2 if there's issues with IBC or something, but I don't think so. And there'll always be the first hour at 4 p.m. CET and the second hour at 5 p.m. CET for the following year. So the April event will be on e-waste and data glut with a sustainability expert on that subject, Jerry McGovern. So if you don't know him, I invite you to look him up on the internet. He's written books and articles on the subject, and he is a renowned expert on that. And to see, I will try and draw him into the topic of e-waste and data problems specific to the media industry. That's in April. So those are the 3 that are prepared. And then we have 8 more slots to fill to get to the end of the year from these 12 different ideas. So there's a bunch around technology. I was a software developer over 30 years ago, and over that time, the biggest constraint in software development is the cost of software developers. So we've done everything to minimize the time of software developers. The result has been that the software we produce today is orders of magnitude less efficient than it was 20, 30 years ago. And that's a big problem. Open source is an exciting subject for us to talk about and its implications, the cloud versus local. Then there's very deep tech subjects with machine vision, how we can save bandwidth and stuff like that. There's an elephant in the room with devices. So I'd like to schedule an event there if I can get a speaker from a company that makes end devices, because we all know that when we measure the carbon emissions from an hour of consuming video, at least half of it comes from the screen, and in some cases 70-80%. So that's a big issue we'd love to address head on. And the whole manufacturing side of things. There's artistic intent in video. So European regulation is going to prevent 8K TVs from next month. So, 8K TV is bad for the planet, and that's fine. I accept that as an argument. But there's also an idea of artistic intent. If 8K is bad, maybe 4K is bad, and maybe HD is bad. Maybe we should go back to black and white, or maybe we should just go and live in the trees. So that's that discussion there. We already run one event on involving the consumer. We'd love to involve another one. What does it mean in the media industry for consumers to press the green button kind of thing and say, I want to be a better consumer? Greening of Streaming guys have been on with us before, and we'd love to steal some of their thunder. They're working on this good enough idea, and we'd like to zoom in on what that actually means for our industry. There's media economics, loads of subjects there. Hemini mentioned the Jevons paradox. We'd love to run a session just on that and what it means for us. Eileen mentioned the circular economy, green procurement, loads to do on economics. In terms of content distribution, there's a whole bunch of companies sitting in the wings with new ideas for how to fix internet streaming, because basically the internet wasn't designed to transport video, and the way we do it is kind of forcing it through. And so there may be ways to improve that. Data center sustainability is a well-known topic. Our most successful event of last year was on broadband sustainability. So we're thinking of doing one of those a year on and say, has anything changed? And talking about progress, I forgot to say that, interesting, in last week's Frontline event, the only conclusion that everybody agreed on is that no progress had been made in the last 12 months. So it'll be interesting to run that in 12 months' time, and hopefully we won't be saying the same thing again. We talked about politics, society, green things like that. So I kind of put that provocative thing, equality, fraternity, sustainability, running an event about that aspect. We'd love to run an event, assuming the current energy crisis is still going to be ongoing, currently linked with the war in Ukraine. Then greenwashing was mentioned several times already today, but it's a topic worthy of discussion in its own right, because I've been there, as a consultant, talking to companies that say they want to start doing green things, but the only thing they can do from where they're standing at the moment can be perceived as greenwashing from the outside. But it's either do that to take a first step, or wait and do nothing till they can do so. So it's not as simple as that. Should we green shame people or not? Eileen brought a whole bunch of ideas on program making, and obviously green storytelling is a fun one, where you see now that, in most series produced by BBC, Sky, there's always a character whose job is to do solar panels and stuff like that. So they have these commitments to try and make green thinking part of everyday life for everyone. Janet is a trade show specialist, and so we might run a thing on trade show sustainability. And that last one, kind of on its own out there, can the FAST model be sustainable? It's a bit provocative, because we have friends who've come here and told us about their FAST model, but there is something intrinsically unsustainable about FAST, and how do we address it? FAST is built around advertising, and advertising is just about overconsumption. And the other aspect of a fast channels business model is to be viewed as much as possible, therefore to consume as many resources as possible. So is there a way of fitting the fast model into sustainability? In terms of time, so that is basically our story for the year ahead. Before I open the floor to more questions, I can see lots coming in. Do you have any remarks, Eileen or Hemini?
The second one for me is great, because the tech side of things is the one that's really complex for me at the moment. And it's the same idea, the idea of having to measure. Half the problem with tech is not something that the organization controls. And there's fragmented chains, there's a number of different suppliers, etc., that are involved in that. So for me, that's where I'm starting, where this is where my doom and gloom is coming from at the moment. It's like,
right,
because we have to start measuring, and it's like, how do we start measuring this this huge thing called tech, and it's in a way it's become like an octopus with tentacles all over the place. And yeah, this is my part now where I need to start either focusing in and looking at one aspect and a small part, and trying to figure out again, how do we look at energy consumption in all of these things, whether it's using the cloud or the idea of measuring distribution. So yes, a lot of there have been a few studies already done on
Right.
content distribution, but for me, this is the part now where I really need to, at least for me in my day-to-day job, is starting to get into, and it's huge, it's heavy. So I look forward to.
So content distribution, right? Yeah, that's also quite techy. Yeah, that could easily fit under tech. Listening to you talk, I realized I could have actually put all of those under tech.
Yeah, and the idea again, as you said, there's a lot of overlapping, and it's normal because the idea of sustainability integrates everywhere into our lives. So,
So clearly on content distribution, I intend to invite my friend from TNO, ex KPN, Arian Costa, who actually just put in a comment. It wasn't a question, a comment, because he said a bit of doom and gloom from us talking about the last 12 months. He says something has changed, is the awareness has significantly changed in the last 12 months. So many more people are thinking about that. That is a slightly nice positive spin on that question. What's changed in the last 12 months? Then, yeah, as I look through the questions, Eileen, do you have any feedback on this?
I think I would like to comment on the content issue, because obviously as broadcasters, anything we do in the context of sustainability is going to be magnified in our broadcast to others. We can do it in our business, yes, but anything we put out there is obviously going to have a magnified impact. And, use of the calculator in organizations to measure, program sustainability, being, the making of a program and its sustainability. That's, I think, coming along very strongly just now. And I think it's actually I suppose the core business of broadcasters and audiovisual is programs. And now we're in a position where we can actually say our programs are being made sustainably. And I think that is a very good yardstick and a way of measuring and seeing that we're achieving things. And that in its turn will have an impact and a learning curve for program makers in how programs are made going forward, and change, to have people thinking more about sustainability in the planning of programs.
Okay. So as if I try and address a few questions, a few of the questions coming in before we move to the open mic session where we'll all be talking together. There's a slightly provocative one for you, Hemini, on the industry. When you're pushing the agenda of sustainability, can you qualify the different groups of people, entities you deal with, whether it's operators, broadcasters, manufacturers, regulators? Is there one group that gives you more resistance or least resistance than others to the whole sustainability agenda?
I would say you can't group them in the big groupings that Rafi has put in. For example, operators or broadcasters, etc. It's more the people within those organizations, and there will be those that are pro and want to be sustainable, to those that are not, and it just depends who you're ending up talking to in those organizations. The main thing is, at the moment, as I mentioned, the hardest part for me is to understand where the greenwashing is happening rather than where resistance, because it's a hot topic now, especially in Europe with a lot of regulations coming in. You've not only the EU, but certain countries have TCFD, etc. So those reportings have started to come in, and we know eventually all organizations will have to start looking at sustainability, and sustainability has become a really hot topic. But for me, it's not so much the resistance, it's being able to understand, as I said, what's greenwashing and what's not.
Right.
So yeah, that's where my difficulties are.
And then just to pick up a really easy question, Jules Schwarz asks whether we can see this program later. The answer is you'll certainly be able to see this part of it will be published by Janet on the website. This part we're still working on. This is a networking event. You know, this isn't just a waterfall thing where we're going to tell you this is the future. We want to make this happen together as an industry. And the next hour is going to be dedicated, among other things. Well, Jonathan will be moderating that, but one of our objectives, if the participants agree, is to work on this, to brainstorm a bit on this, and to turn it into useful topics. So to answer Jules' question, we will share it with you, but even better, join us and make it what you need to hear about over the next 12 months. Lots and lots of questions coming in, just in case I forget, because the way the technology works is we will be cut off on the hour, and so you will need to leave the room, and you'll go back to the previous tab in your browser. Janet will jump in if I'm saying anything wrong, and you'll click on the next session below, which is going to be the open mic session, where we ask you please to mute your mic if you're not talking, and we will cover the questions that we haven't been able to get to now. But Janet and Hemini and Eileen, you can actually see all the questions. If there's one you'd like to pick up.
Trace has put one, what would be a good first step to start if you're a big organizations with a lot of hurdles to take? I would say the first thing you need to do is get a organizational carbon calculator and measure what your footprint is, because there is nothing you can do to have a strategy or anything to say we've become greener by doing this if you're not measuring it. Also, you've got to know your baseline point from where you're starting.
I think I would also add to that as well that I think we need to remember that when we're using calculators, they're effectively a tool and we're measuring. And, you know, we may be looking for certification, yes, but I think it's also good to put into our strategy a measurement of improvement going forward. So it's like reading a meter. You only know over a period of time how you're doing. So I think we probably should be looking at the use of calculators that way as well, that we're looking over a period of time, how we used to do things and the changes that we've made because of what we've learned from our footprint.
Okay, and that I had that in the program making thing. Yeah, carbon calculators, which is a hot topic for which I personally know nothing. So I'd be really excited for that session. Welcome, Dom. Dom Robinson's joined us from Greening of Streaming. He was a bit late, and will be with us for the next thing. Your ears may have been burning because we talked about you several times in the last hour. To go back to that FAST issue, you know, will we run a session on FAST and the sustainability of that model? Ariane again has put in an interesting comment here saying that the Dutch public broadcaster is not using targeted advertisements anymore. It's now just purely context related because it makes better revenues this way than targeted ads. So asking, well, maybe FAST isn't helping at all to make more money. So Ariane, we will have you as a featured guest to help us run that that session. Oops, clicking on the wrong button. Quickly, any other questions that we can address before we have to wrap off? We have, so if you're, by the way, if you're watching this on demand, don't hesitate to ask questions anyway, but obviously not live. You can, the media meet and greet platform is open 365. So you can, even if you're watching us on YouTube, you can go there, create an account and ask a question there, and it will make its way back to the relevant speakers. Question perhaps for you, Eileen. Trees was saying, you know, could the tech department simply fix things with 5G coming in? whose responsibility is it going to be to prevent the fact that all streaming starts being 4K because 5G can do it, and Jevons paradox is there and space is empty, let's do it. So is it a technology problem to be solved?
Within RTE, we have a sustainability group who manage all aspects of sustainability. And we have a technology lead attending that meeting. So I suppose the way we would manage all these issues is that sustainability is filtered into all our departments and also in our procurement. So all of the issues like Trees has highlighted will come up. I can't speak to all of them here, but they will come up in the context of being managed appropriately at the appropriate time within the organization.
This is over and out from Eileen, Hemini, Janet, and myself. See you in a few minutes and next month.